Hello, my name is Craig Lilia, and many of you may remember that a couple of weeks ago my daughter Jessica and I made a teaser video to tell you a little bit about rain gardens and to expect having more information about rain gardens. Jess is a water resources engineer at Bar Engineering, and as we got into the exploring the possible things that Hopeful Earth Keepers, our group at church, could do for ourselves, for our church, and also information for people in our congregation or in the community, we just came up with the idea of a rain garden. And Jess has some expertise and information about rain gardens that we thought we'd share with you today. And the format, I will ask some questions and Jess will give some information to you. And if you have questions at the end of the video, you can either get a hold of me or Lori Schrader or my wife Maggie, and we can help give you information, or we can get in touch with Jess and she can share more information. So I'll start asking questions and we'll get some answers. First one, the obvious, what is a rain garden?
Good question. What's basically what it sounds like. So it's a shallow depression garden that captures rainfall runoff. It's not meant to be a wetland, it's not a pond, it's not something that holds water for longer than about 24 hours, but it's just a shallow depression that captures stormwater runoff.
Second question is, why are rain gardens important?
Great question. They are fantastic for a lot of reasons. Kind of the big thing is that they slow the flow. So if you think about this area around here, 150, 200 years ago was forested. There were wetlands, prairies, things like that. So rainfall would hit the ground and 80%, 90% would soak into the ground. As we've developed the areas, with farming and building up neighborhoods and things like that, which is great, when stormwater hits those surfaces that are hard, impermeable, rather than soaking into the ground, it runs off and into our lakes and our streams. And so the idea with rain gardens is that when water comes down, it can hit the parking lot or the roof and then flow into a low depression and soak into the ground and benefit things that way. One of the reasons that's important is because as water runs across parking lots, driveways, roads, it picks up particles and pollutants and carries those along down into our lakes and our streams. It also is running quickly, so it has greater potential for eroding soil that it runs across. And it also is generally warm. So if you think about a hot parking lot on a summer day and as rainfall comes down, that first half inch to an inch is really warm water. So that rain garden allows that water to slow down, cool off, soak into the ground. Some may still continue on down the way, but it's dramatically changes the temperature of the water and the pollutant load. Another reason that they're really great is they are landscapes that are really beneficial for wildlife. So things like birds and butterflies and other kinds of insects, pollinators, they're terrific for that. And I guess the third kind of final reason they're important is they are really low maintenance. So that beginning year takes some time and effort to kind of get them established, but after that you have native soils and native plants that can really be self-sustaining and for the long run.
Okay, and hearing that, where would you put a rain garden then? I mean, it all makes sense, but where would you put it then?
So there are a few things to keep in mind when you're thinking about where to put a rain garden. You want to stay away from foundations, at least 10 feet away from a foundation of a home or another kind of building like the church. You want to make sure that you are at least 35 feet away from septic drain fields, and then at least 50 feet away from a drinking water well. Another thing to keep in mind is to make sure that you're not putting one in where there are any utilities. So this maybe goes without saying, but anytime you're doing any digging, you should always go for one call ahead of time to make sure you can locate all of your below-ground utilities in the region that you want to excavate. One other thing to kind of keep in mind is whether you have a sunny spot or a shady spot, you can do it really in any of those locations, but the plants tend to do better with full sun or partial sun.
So next question that would jump out for a lot of people, including me, are they expensive then? Is this an expensive endeavor?
I would say they're really no more expensive than a regular garden. You can do a lot of the work yourself. You can do basically all the work yourself, and then it's a matter of getting the plants that are appropriate. And then, like I said before, there's kind of an investment up front, but then over time it's really low maintenance.
Which we think that maybe consider doing it around our house even after talking to Jess for a while. But one of the questions I would have is, how do you size a rain garden then, for like a home or for the runoff at church off the parking lot? How would you size that?
Sure. There are a lot of great resources out there, and I'll touch on those at the end, that can kind of give you some ideas about, if you have a parking lot that is such a size, how big you want your rain garden to be. But for the typical home, somewhere between 100 and 300 square feet is a good range. The other thing you want to think about is how deep. 4 to 8 inches is really as deep as you want that to go, because you really do want that to drain down in 24 hours or less. So a way that you can figure that out is by doing a little permeability test in your soil. So you dig an 8-inch deep by 8-inch diameter hole, or even a little bit bigger, and then fill that up with water and wait 24 hours and see if that's drained down entirely, or if it's drained down 4 inches. And you can use that as kind of a rule of thumb. So if it's dropped 4 inches, you could have your rain garden be basically 4 inches, because you know that in 24 hours that soil will allow 4 inches to drain down.
Okay. But it sounds like we might be putting in a perfect place for mosquitoes to breed and come and bite us.
It does. I can see why you might think that. But the beautiful thing about rain gardens is that, again, they are designed to be drained in 24 hours or less. So the idea is that mosquitoes may lay their eggs in that 24-hour ponding, but they need 3 to 7 days to become full adults, and so it actually may act as kind of a mosquito death trap. The other piece of it is that, depending on what kind of plants you install in your rain garden, they may be attractive to things like dragonflies, and so it might actually become a net benefit in terms of mosquito population.
That sounds good. So how would you got everything set, how would you build a rain garden, and what's involved in building a rain garden?
Sure. So a few things to think about. So you're thinking about where you're placing it, and so one of the things that I didn't mention before, but you should be cognizant of, is water runs downhill. So you would not want to place the rain garden, say, uphill of your home, or necessarily in the lowest spot. If you have a really low wet spot in your yard, you can tell that that's an area that actually may not infiltrate water very well. So what you could consider is putting that rain garden a little bit uphill of that wet spot, or adjacent to a parking lot, adjacent to your driveway, maybe offset 10 to 20 feet from your house, at an area where you have a downspout.
So it becomes somewhat of like even a dam. It slows the water down then from getting to that low spot.
Right, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yep. So it's the idea that you're going to find a spot where that water can infiltrate before it gets to the wet spot, and it will be a benefit to the wet spot. There's a few other things to think about with that.
Okay.
If I can go there.
Sure.
Thinking about what kind of the preparation that goes into building one. So you remove your sod. You build up a little bit of a dam if it is on a slope. If it's in level ground, it's almost like you're just excavating a level section that will be 4 to 8 inches deep. And then you'll amend the soil. So depending on if it's sandy or clay, any of those soils are okay, but amending it will really be helpful for sand, in that it'll hold that water a little longer. It'll be helpful for clay, in that it gives it a little more organics, area for the plants to grow. And then thinking about what kind of plants you want. Natives are fantastic. Some of you may know that native plants tend to have much deeper rooting systems, and so they are really good at sort of getting established and being able to last longer under varying moisture conditions. They also do a great job of sucking pollutants out of the soil or the water. And then a couple of other things just to kind of consider with that is choosing plants that are different heights, that have different blooming times, so really be beautiful to look at. Clumping things together that are the same kind of plant, 3 to 7 plants together in clumps. And there are some, again, fantastic resources out there to kind of help pick out some of those things.
So hearing all that information, one thing that well, like as I mentioned, we talked about is possibly doing a rain garden at our church. And if any of you have an opportunity to go to our church and look at when we put the new parking lot in about 4 or 5 years ago, with Bill Augustin's help and a few other people, we drained a lot of that water to go behind the shed at church. And it seems to be an ideal spot for that. The area looks like it's about 30 feet by 30 feet, so we could, and it looks like it might be a low spot. So it seems like that would be appropriate application for that. So if any of you want to swing by the parking lot, although we aren't having church services, and just take a look at where the water flows off of our parking lot behind the shed, I think, and we might get a good idea. And then even perhaps we might even proceed with some planning and possibly some construction of a rain garden sometime in the near future, maybe this year. And so I guess it's an exciting opportunity for all of us to see it at church, see how it works, and use that as an idea along with the ideas and suggestions that Jess just gave us to do a rain garden in our own yard. See the beautiful flowers, see the pollinators, see the dragonflies, and to see everything about it, and know that we are doing our part in helping to take care of God's creation.
Fantastic. I think that's wonderful. And I'll just share a few more resources.
Great.
So
Great.
as you go through that planning process at church or at home, the University of Minnesota and University of Wisconsin Extension Services both have different rain garden guides that have fantastic ideas about plants and sizing and placement. And there is also a group called Blue Thumb, and so they also have some terrific resources. And the only other one I'll mention is the MPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, has a guide to stormwater plants. And so if you Google any of those, they have fantastic resources. And particularly the guide to stormwater plants has all kinds of wonderful things. It was put together by a couple of folks a few years back, and talks about, the moisture tolerance of plants, if they can handle salt, so if it's runoff from a parking lot, for instance, all kinds of things like that. So some
Terrific.
great resources that are out there.
That's great. I happened to pick up Jess's copy of that Blue Thumb spiral bound book that she had. It's an excellent resource. So I just jumped online to see what other resources, and as you are all may be very fully aware, the resources online are phenomenal. And the ones Jess is mentioning, obviously, with our universities, do such a great job. So you won't have any problem finding things. And I've learned a lot from Jess just to hear about the different ways and why we do them, and the different functioning. So thank you for watching through the entire video. And again, if you do have any questions, Jess would be happy to answer. And in fact, she actually comes to visit us periodically. So we'd love to come and join you and maybe even talk to you about your own situation, maybe even look at your yard and give you some ideas. So thanks, Jess. I appreciate your wisdom and all the information you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Happy to do it.